Hi guys, welcome back again to my YouTube channel. So recently I drafted the pattern for the making of this beautiful bustier that you're seeing here. You can see how well it stands. This pattern also involved the process of drafting out the yoke. So if you're interested in learning how to draft the pattern for your bustier with yoke, keep on watching and let's get started. Guys, these are the materials we're going to be using for this tutorial. As you can see here, I have this red fabric. I was actually going for something like this in this picture, so I wanted a plain red fabric. Crepe is the best thing to use for something like this, a very soft crepe. The fabric I have here is very thick, so don't use this type of red fabric. And again, I'm going to be using my African print for the body part of this dress. Now we are going to go ahead and start drafting the pattern on our pattern paper. I'll take this part here as the center of my pattern. First thing I'm going to do is to draw a straight line across the top of my pattern paper here to serve as the starting line, or you can call it the shoulder line. Now from this shoulder line here, I am going to place my tape and measure down to my bust point. Shoulder to bust point for me is 10 inches. Still leaving the tape at this top, I'm going to measure down to my shoulder to under bust, which is 13 inches. I'll mark it here. And then still leaving the tape at the top, I'll measure down to my shoulder to waist, which is 16 inches. So I'm going to draw straight lines across these points. So this is the shoulder line, this is the bust line, and then this is the under bust line, and we have the waistline here. So you have to take your personal measurements for you to be able to get these lines. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to take the measurement of my shoulder on the shoulder line. My shoulder measurement divided by 2 is 7. I just marked it here. And I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. If you watch my tutorials a lot, you should be used to me doing this by now. So now from the neckline, I'm going to go in by 3 inches for the neck width, so that I will now connect from the shoulder slope into that neck width. So just go ahead and do the same thing. So now from my shoulder slope, we are going to determine our armhole depth. So from here, I'm going to go down by 7 inches, which is my armhole depth. Now, some people actually come up from their bust line by 2 inches or 2.5 inches, depending on their size. But the best way to get this particular measurement for yourself is to divide your bust measurement by 6 and add 1.5 to it, and you will get yours. So for me, it is 7 inches. I just measured this 7 inches from the shoulder slope to create a new point and drew a straight line across. So this new line I just created is going to be my chest line. So I am connecting a line now from the shoulder slope down to my chest line. So this is it. Next thing you're going to do is to get the midpoint from your shoulder slope down to the chest line. So you can fold your tape into 2 like this to get the midpoint like this, like I'm doing here. And I'm going to go in from here by 1/2 inch. Now on the chest line, I will go ahead and divide my bust measurement into 4. And I will make a point here like this. Now for my armhole curve, I'll connect this point, and this point here using my French curve. If you don't have a French curve, you can do this with your free hand. So now what I'm going to do is on the bust line, I am going to go in by half of my nipple to nipple measurement. I'll mark it also on the under bust line and on the waistline. So you're going to also use your own personal measurement to mark these points and join all of them together with a straight line. Now you're going to come to this shoulder area. From this point here, you see I've marked it out with a marker. You're going to get the midpoint. Just divide what you have there into 2 and connect from this new point into the bust point, just like I'm doing like this. So this is kind of like your shoulder dart. Now we're going to be taking in our darts on the under bust line and on the waistline. For this particular part, different people have different ways they go about their bustiers, but let me show you how I go about mine. This is the center of our blouse here, okay? So from this line here, on the part going towards the center, I'm going in by 1/2 inch on the under bust line and on the waistline. If the person you're sewing for is very busty, you can use 3/4 inch for this particular one instead of 1/2 inch. When I mean very busty, I mean very busty. But if it's an average person, 1/2 inch should work. Now on this part going towards the side, I am going to be using 1.5 inch on the under bust line and on the waistline. Now again, if the person is very busty, your client is very busty, you can go ahead and use 2 inches. Now from this bust line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. So now this 1 inch point, I'm going to connect from the under bust line that we have here with my curves to this 1 inch that we came down by from the bust line, just like you see me doing like this. So I'll just connect this to meet the bust line like this. So now the next thing we want to do before I take the over bust tightening, I want to trace out the neckline so that we can take away the yoke area. Now this is something you can do with your free hand. It's going to be a sweetheart neckline. I want it to be a sweetheart neckline here. If you don't want a sweetheart neckline, you can use whatever neckline you want. And for this, my curve here can actually give me a very beautiful sweetheart neckline, but I want to actually do it with my free hand first before going in to use my curve to shape it out. So now the first thing I'm going to do is from the bust line here, I want to come up by 1.5 inch. You can come up by 1 inch or whatever you want, depends on how covered you want your bustier to be and how you want the shape to be. But you want to make sure that your sweetheart neckline, the curve is not too deep, because if it's too deep, you're going to have a lot of issues with joining it together. Okay, so make sure that the sweetheart is not too deep. So I've used my pencil to just create my sweetheart neckline, as you can see, and I'm now tracing it out with my curve and my marker. So now this is the sweetheart neckline, and I'm going to be taking in my over bust tightening now, and this other part will be the yoke. So how I'm going to go about this is on the part going towards the side of our pattern, the part going towards the side, I am going to be marking 3/4 inch, and on the part going towards the center, I'll mark 1 inch. Now you can actually decide to use 1 inch on both sides here if you want to, instead of 3/4 inch on one side. So I just connected these points now with my curve to meet the bust line, and I'm just using my marker to try and smoothing it out. So this is how to go about the bustier area. This area here is going to be cut off, and this part as well that I've marked. Now we're going to add our body measurements to this pattern. Now on this chest line here, our bust measurement divided by 4 is marked here. Now we have a dart intake that we have to replace, or else this bustier will be too small. So what I have here is about 1.25 inch. I'll replace it back. Okay, now on the under bust line, I'm going to mark my round under bust measurement divided by 4, and now I'll replace this dart that we have here. It's about 2 inches. I'll replace it back. Okay, now on the waistline, I'll do the same thing. My round waist measurement divided by 4, I just marked it, and I'll also replace the dart back to this side. So now I will just try to use my curve rule to just connect all these points together in the best way possible to give me my side line. So guys, this is done, and this area here is our yoke. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is to determine the neckline for the yoke. So I'm just going to come down by 3.5 inches for now, and I will just use my curve to just create a round neckline. You can decide to create any neckline you want for your yoke. Actually, it doesn't necessarily have to be a round neckline. So now this is the center front, and this is the side front for our bustier, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut out this front pattern. So guys, these are all the front patterns. This is the yoke, the center front, and the side front. So guys, this is the back pattern. I've drawn it halfway. I drew a straight line across this part here. It can be folded in. This is our zipper allowance, and the distance from the center of this paper to where my line is here that I'm folding in is about 1.5 inches. So this right here is our zipper allowance. So this is like a difference between the front and the back right now. So I have the shoulder line, the bust line, the chest line, and the waistline here. Now we're going to be adding our body measurements to this, and they must start from the zipper allowance line. So my nipple to nipple measurement is starting from the zipper allowance line. I'm starting it from the zipper allowance line. So I came in on the chest line by the 3.5 inches, on the bust line and also on the waistline. So I'm going to join all of these together to give me a straight line, as you can see. So now the next thing I'm going to do is from the chest line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, and then on the waistline I'll just go in on both sides of my line by 1/2 inch. So I'll connect these points to meet the 1 inch that I came down by from the chest line. This is just basically a normal back pattern that I'm drafting. This is nothing serious at all. This is just a normal back pattern. So I've drafted out the dart, and now the next thing I'm going to do is on the bust line I'm going to add my bust measurement divided by 4, and on the waistline I'll mark my waist measurement divided by 4 here, and I'll replace the little dart intake that is here, which is 1 inch, and I'm going to replace it back. So now I will join all the points from the chest line, the bust line and the waistline together using my ruler. Now we're going to determine how we want our yoke to be at the back. I'm going to be maintaining the chest line for the depth of this yoke. So you can decide to have like a V-neck, or you can decide to have like a sweetheart neckline, whatever neckline you want to. Make sure that all your measurements are taken from this line here, this zipper allowance line, not from the end of your paper. So I'll first of all trace out this line on the chest line to make it more visible. So this whole upper part here is our yoke. So you can decide to make use of a round neckline, you can decide to use a V neckline, and for me here I decided to have like a stylish open neckline. So I just placed my curves like this, kind of like a half circle, and drew a line across. So I'm going to be having like a half circle opening at the back of my yoke. So I'll just place this area together like this. So this is the yoke for the back. You can decide to do any design of your choice, like I said before. So from this chest line here, I'm going to cut it out. Now this whole upper part is the yoke, and this side is the neckline for the yoke. Like I said, it's going to be opened like a half circle. So this is basically it for the drafting of the back pattern. Now from the waistline on the center back, the zipper allowance area, I'm coming in by 1/2 inch, and I'm going to be sloping it into the neckline like you see me doing like this. This is going to help us avoid any form of bulginess that might want to come in when we are joining this together later. And I just went ahead to cut it out. So these are the front patterns and the back patterns. Now these are the fabrics we want to use to make this blouse. Okay, so the yokes are going to be cut out on the red piece here, as you can see, and the remaining body part will be cut out on the actual fabric. So I've placed the yokes on the red piece like this. The piece is folded into 2, and the front yoke is placed on the folded edge. The front must be placed on the folded edge, and the other part of the yoke can just be placed anyhow. So as you can see, I am going to go ahead and just cut around my pattern paper. I'm making sure to add about 1/2 inch for stitching allowance all the way around, but I did not add any stitching allowance to the armhole area. So guys, this is it for the yoke. Now for the other body part, I also went ahead to cut it out. I made sure that the center front was on the folded edge as well. Now what I did was to add 1/2 inch stitching allowance all the way around these places like this, as you can see, but on the side I added 1.5 inch because we need enough allowance on the side, okay, to join the pieces together, obviously. Now for the back, I did the same thing. I added 1/2 inch around all the other parts except from the side where I added 1.5 inch. So you can see the side here I added 1.5 inch. Okay, so this is all for the drafting of this pattern, and in my next tutorial I'm going to be showing you guys how to join all these pieces together, how to pad the bustier area, and also how to add the yoke. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I'll see you guys in my next one, and if you're still yet to subscribe to my channel, please hit on the subscribe button.